Welcome to Week 9, Access Systems Implementation. So what are we going to look at this week? Access control system protects both organizations and its users. We're going to look at having limited, we're going to look at who should be limited to what certain documents they should view, what computer systems they should be on, applications, who gets to run them, and how all this comes together, who will have full access. Basically, we're going to be limiting who can see what. We're going to look at the different policy, standards, guidelines, and procedures to implement the access control. We're going to look at how to transform access control and how to integrate policies and procedures to make sure everyone has what they need when they need it. Multi-layers of access control, internal and external employees. How do we deal with vendors? And then we're going to look at some portals. These are what this week we're going to be examining. So as we reviewed in the other chapters, access control limits who can get access to specific areas, whether it's on the network, even into the building, into different offices, who has access into the accounting department, who has access to the IT department, whether it's through the system, physical, or through the network. So this is what we're going to be looking at today. What policies and procedures are in place to allow this. We're going to have our formal process and plan. We're going to state our goals of what the company is and how we're going to reach them. We're going to look at how to determine what policies and standards you're going to be able to reference. Determine how you can make documentation and policies in there. Come up with an effective way to make sure the documents are there. Policies. They're basically what the organization must ensure that all employers own computer systems. So when you go to work, you have a computer. Well, it's owned by the company. What policies do they have for you using it? We're going to look at the different standards. The ISO 27002 standard. The different guidelines and how to recommend what passwords, what is the minimum length, what is the maximum length. And we're going to look at how the different procedures are implemented. So what are we going to look at? The approach. We're going to look at the beginning of the works through the end, how it starts right all the way up to the end. So how are we assessment? What is the infrastructure? What determines our goals? What is our procedures? And we're going to give an overview of what all this is. We're going to look at how the different implementation. Once you decide the approach, how are we going to implement it? What's the mission of the implementation? Is it going to be organized? Is it going to be by department? So these are some of the things we need to evaluate and then put in a plan before we start doing this. Which tools are we going to need to access this? What is our security communications going to be? Authentication. Are we going to be using MAC addresses? Are we going to be using the BRC or the secure socket layers, as we learned last week? How will the methods be implemented? Will they be in place all at once, or are they going to be phased in? These are some of the questions that we need to look at before we get going on where we're putting all this. Some standards that are out there that we need to think about and follow. Basically, they've been incorporated to make sure that all our systems work together, whether we're using a Windows, Mac, Unix, whether it's this way it doesn't depend on the type of topology we have. If we follow the current standards, we'll make sure that all our systems will be in place, that they'll be secure, and that technology allows us to follow them. So what is IEEE? IEEE was created in 1963. It's a not-for-profit organization. And basically, it overlooks all the technology standards from the IEEE 802, which is all the communication standards. 01 describes the basic MAC standards. And we'll look in some of the 82011 standards, which is the Wi-Fi standards. We'll look at those also. But they create control. They also deal with MAC addresses. They control all that. This way everyone has the same type of information no matter where they are. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST, that was founded in 1901. It is a non-regulatory federal agency in the U.S. Department. Basically, it promotes all the different standards used for testing. It creates the testing that we follow today. It documents everything and ensures that all the standards are met the same, so this way anyone can build whatever systems they need to meet these standards. The Federal Information Security Management Act was created in 2002 under the E-Government Act, and that requires federal agencies to develop, document, and implement an agency-wide program to provide information security for information and information systems. It should be a risk assessment, periodic risk assessment. What policies and procedures are on risk assessment? What is security awareness training? What are some of the procedures for detecting and reporting security incidents? These are some of the things that fall under that. And we have the ISO documentation is developed. And this is not associated with any government, but it's an entity that works to ensure that all the procedures are met. So ISO 9001 is a quality management system. There's ISO 1400, which is a recycling issue. And in the book, it talks about ISO 31000, which is risk management, how they deal with it. And basically what ISO does is it comes up with recommendations, and these are worldwide recommendations, on what's the best policies and procedures to put into place. So you can be, your company can become certified using these standards, and it allows the company to have a set of procedures that follow. And that's really what it is. It says that you're following these procedures to the best of your knowledge, the best of your ability. And you have the Internet Engineering Task Force. And this was formed in 1986, and it's an international organization that focuses on the Internet and Internet protocols. These include transmission protocols, TCP/IP, how all that comes together, the application layer, transport layer, internet layer, data link layer as part of the OSI module. The PCI standard. This was developed in 2006 for developing, managing education, and provided awareness for payment of credit cards. Ensures that the standards are all met by everyone. This way, when you're dealing with the different banks across the way, that if everyone's following the same standards, it makes it easier to do business, and it builds and maintains the security networks, protects the cardholders' data, implements strong access control measures, and allows all that. Center of Internet Security. The Center of Internet Security is a nonprofit independent community of professionals that provide best practices for securing and configuration of network devices such as Apple iPhone or Cisco's devices. It deals with benchmarking. Matrices are put together and collected so you can benchmark what you're going to be doing. And it promotes a consensus of based standards. These are industry-wide as saying, hey, this is what we should be using. When we create simple standards, our procedures, they should be easy to follow. The standard should have encrypted, what are we doing? And it's just nice, easy to follow is what we're trying to get everyone to have. Everyone's using the same thing. So how do I identify management and access controls? Well, a way to identify all associates within the organization, review identities and ensure they're categorized, and everyone should have their own standards. So, when you identify management, it's a way to identify anyone within their organization. What is their role? What access do they need? How are we going to give them authorization? Is it going to be through a password? Is it going to be through biometrics or a smart card? Once everyone's been identified and all their areas of need have been addressed, then we can start writing the procedures on how people will get in. We will look over, so if someone's in accounting, they should only see accounting, they shouldn't see sales, and vice versa. So by identifying and marking everything down, we're able to keep track of where everyone needs to be. What is user behavior? Identify how the user is going to use the application. When are they going to need access to it? Are they going to need remote access? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be within the organization? Are they going to have to get out to a third-party software? So we need to identify what vendors are we going to be using, what employees need access to all this, and how are they going to get access to it. Is the third party going to be secure, or is it going to be over the internet? Is it going to be a VPN? So we have different things that we need to address with this. How often are they going to access the application? Who accesses it? And what are they going to do once they get there? So these are some of the behaviors that we need to address. It's not just loading computers, applications onto the computer systems and letting the employees run rampant. We need to make sure we can control where they get and where they're going. And that by giving them third-party access, it doesn't allow a security breach. What is the size of our staff? Are we going to plan for growth? What is the growth plan over the next couple of years? Can our systems handling it? So we need to have a complete inventory of all our IT systems, who's going to be using them, at what control levels, where are our servers going to be secure, our routers, firewall, workstations, databases, where's the network, how is it going to be secured to make sure no one has access to any of the nodes on our network. How are we going to implement the risk? How do we keep our network administrators must be aware of all the different available options that they have? We have to make sure we secure all the objects from phones, smartphones, desktops, laptops. How are we going to make sure that only the right people are using it when we need it? So we're going to be looking at how we're going to control a multi-layer access control. So basically we have to make sure we provide a defense in-depth mechanism and therefore stronger protection for the networks and its users. Multi-layer allows us to build up blocks, roadblocks, so if a hacker gets in, they have to go through multiple levels. It's not just they get in once and then they can get in. They get in at a low level and then it'd be difficult to move on through that. So we're going to build multi-layers. So some of the things we're going to look at: the user control profile. And this identifies authorization allowable for each user, such as what access is allowed and what is denied. And we want to keep the users at the minimal amount of access that they have. We don't want to give any users more than they need to do their job, because that opens us up to vulnerabilities. So we want to limit the access that any user can have. So if one user gets hacked, it won't allow them to get through the entire system. System can access. At the system level access, systems rights to each system that they have access to. In the system read-only databases, users can only read the database, providing accessibilities. So someone who is not doing data entry should only have access to reviewing the data. They can't change the database. This limits the vulnerability of an attack, because we have limited to that user can only have certain rights. Application access. Employees may be given full access or limited amount of access to systems and applications. Applications may be direct controlled or placed on them, such as limited execution. Once launched, the application may be access controlled and allowed specific. So database. DB creator can create a database and alter it. Server can change the server, and a system admin can perform activities on the server. These are different levels. File and access. If the user is not given access to a certain application, access to the location of that may be limited as well. Assigning controls to the file and folders allow another layer of protection. Limited read and write access will ensure that if the user is hacked, they have limited to what they can do. The last area is the data access. After passing through the different layers of control, limiting access, the data itself is your last method of protecting. A privilege such as a read or write is an example of security measures placed on against data. As mentioned previously, many databases applications such as MySQL provide this type of access control. So by controlling the multi-layers from the user access to system access to application, we're able to limit what a hacker can do if they get in. If they hack into one particular user, that user has limited exposure to the network. So here we can, as you can see, we have different levels of security access here. This is in our local security, software restrictions. As you can see here, security levels. We can pinpoint to where we want to keep users at. Enforcement policies. This is generally apply software restrictions to allow all users that all the users can't have access to certain things. We need certificate, whether we want to enforce them or not. And all files such as DLLs are available. Here we can designate different file types. Over here, what do we want to be able to run? So here we can say what files we want to run and what can't be run. We can actually say, you know, if it's an executable, it must be run by an administrator. If it's a bat file, someone else can run it. So we're able to control who, by the extensions on the file, who can run what and when. We can even put times on it to prevent it from running. And did we trust the publisher? Is that someone who we verified it with? Do we allow it to run without that information? So these are some of the areas that we're able to say, hey, well, let's lock down our system to make sure that anyone who's in here, we can control. Our file access, same thing. We can control who has access. Scott has access to these files. He can only read or run an executable. Administrator will have all rights. In this way we can lock down a user, a guest can only read. So it allows us to have a specific control right down to the file and the folder that we want. Access control for employees, remote employees, customers, and business partners. In today's environment, we have many people that want to work from home, so we have to make sure we have access for remote users, usually through a VPN. But we have to make sure that when they're on that VPN, that it is secure. It protects our business, protects them, that they don't have anything on there before they even get onto the system. VPNs are established to allow remote access users to get into our network. So it appears that they're on our network. And this is the same concept for if we have an off-site facility. It provides the same information. It reduces the cost by allowing commuters to work from home, and improves flexibility by giving users the ability to work from anywhere if they're traveling, and provides secure communications through the encryption process that makes sure that all the data is encrypted, so we don't have to worry about anyone seeing what's being sent over it. So some of the things we got to look at are some of the authentication methods. How do we make sure that the user is who they are? What is their membership group? If they're dialing from remote, are their membership groups changed so they might not have the same access than if they were in the office for sensitive data? These are some of the things that we can control through the VPN process. And intranet. Intranet is business. It's for the internal only. It provides private networks for the employees. Might have HR, payroll information, parties that might be going on. But it's limited outside communication. And basically it's just a update for the company, like company directory would be there, locations of it, organizational charts. This is all for internal users only. There's no external users that can see this. This is for employees that must sign in and get to it. Usually if you're on the network at work, it's available to you, but if you're not, you need to log in. Information such as your 401k would be on there, and general information, but it's meant for employees only. And we have extranet, and extranet allows us to work with our suppliers. business partners. So an extranet could be an example of your paper vendor. When you run out of paper, they come deliver it. It also for vendors, when they, if you think of a grocery store, when the oranges run out, the orange supplier sees that they run out, he checks through the extranet, and he gets a notification that they need more oranges there. They ship the oranges. He'll go in and bill them automatically, and everything is paid through the extranet. So this way it allows a paperless system with our vendors and suppliers that they're able to have this information for us dialed in, and we know that it's a secure site. E-commerce sites. Usually these are business to business or business to customer. They allow us to do business with our customers or other businesses. So it has a little bit more encryption on it, has digital encryption, uses public keys, but it allows us to transmit data through portals that allow the vendor and our customers to have this information. Secure online banking. In today's environment, we use online banking as a web portal and all the encryption processes that might be there. This allows us to have our security. And what are we going to have? We have to have a login and password and sometimes some types of identification. Basically, we're trying to protect assigning users devices only they can get to, formal access control, and enrollment of the new users. What authentication are we going to be using? Implementation access. So if you look at how a VPN is going to work, up here we have our internal network is down in here. We have our firewall, our router. Here's the internet. Here, this is your home user sitting here. We have it through our internet. Of a VPN, think of it as a pipeline that no one can see the data flowing through. It goes through, it punches a hole through the internet, basically right to our firewall. Once it gets to our firewall, we recognize it, and then we allow them access, and it will be routed to the correct server or network that they need. We're going to be, the use of certificates. This verifies that who we sent it to is the person we got it from. The information is available to him by clicking on the padlock. He can connect further details by clicking on this to view what's going on. We have our logins and passwords that allow us to secure what's going on. Some general best practices. Understand the roles within the organization. Identify users and their roles to determine which access controls to put in place. Segregating access by role ensures that someone in the customer service department does not have access to HR. Understanding that data that resides on the network. An administrator cannot protect what he or she does not know. This includes the data and software. If it's certain applications need access to specific ports, the administrator needs to ensure that those ports are open and that the tools don't let hackers in. Knowing where all the data resides also helps protect the data. Establishing a baseline. Understanding that the normal behavior of a network helps you understand what access controls are required. Monitor activities. After establishing a baseline, it's important to monitor a regular basis. Monitor can identify new activities that are allowed. During the day, you have so much traffic flowing. If at night you don't have traffic and you notice traffic patterns at night, that could be an indication that a hacker's trying to get in. So we have to set guidelines, and we can set up warning systems that if they do exceed that, we're able to identify this before we get hacked. Create guidelines and policies that are easy to understand. They should be written in a nice, easy understanding language, easy that everyone can understand them and read them. Security is the role that everyone within the organizations must know. So we need to train our employees and make it so that it makes sense to them. Removing access from a user that has left the company. How do we get through that? Managing remote access capabilities. We talked about the use of VPN and partners and customers, but we have to make sure that we manage their access and keep it limited to only the areas that they need. Provide strong security. Protecting assets, files, people, and applications is the best practice for any organization. The risk associated with data getting into the wrong hands is not something an organization can afford. So one of the things, the main goal is protect our data and our customers. How can we earn employees that no data gets lost? So what did we look at? We understood the importance of access control and security, vital to every organization. Security is the only as strong as the weakest point. As we talked about in the past, social engineering is a big problem that we need to, the only way to get around that is educating them. We've discussed best practices and what is the benefits of having everyone on board with security. So that was week 11 that we were looking at. So thank you. Have a good day.